Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spurs Up Show, the best Gamecocks podcast on the internet. Today is Tuesday, October the 20th, 2020. On today's show, former Gamecocks football player Alex McGrath joins me as he does each and every single Tuesday as we break down South Carolina's 30-22 win over the 15th-ranked Auburn Tigers, and we also look ahead as South Carolina travels to Baton Rouge. We'll talk about the game this weekend as the Gamecocks look to make it 3 straight wins when they take on the LSU Tigers at Tiger Stadium this weekend. Before we get into everything, this is a podcast brought to you by our friends over at Upstate Movers Group. Guys, Upstate Movers Group's superior moving service. They bring care and attention other companies can't offer because they're just too busy maintaining trucks and profiting off of them instead of focusing on service. Service is really what makes Upstate Movers Group stand out, guys. So they're not a trucking company. They're a moving services company, and they're also employee-owned co-op. Their movers are paid twice the industry average, so everyone on the crew is just as invested in the success of the project as you are. They also have dedicated professional crew members, and they offer black glove service as well, which means they offer end-to-end packing services, custom crating and packaging for special items, and cleaning services as well. Like I said, guys, they're going to take care of you. The service side of things is what separates Upstate Movers Group and makes them the best option for your moving needs. Oh, by the way, they were also founded by Greenville natives and University of South Carolina alumni. You know we're all about helping Gamecocks on this show. Gamecocks helping Gamecocks. Like I said, founded by USC alumni, founded by Greenville natives. They also offer 20 years of project management and moving experience, and they can offer logistics and solutions that traditional moving companies simply don't have the skills for. Guys, go check them out, upstatemoversgroup.com. That's upstatemoversgroup.com. Again, guys, founded by Greenville natives and USC alumni. We're all about Gamecocks helping Gamecocks. Whenever you need your moving services, whether you're in the upstate or just around the state of South Carolina, contact Upstate Movers Group. Again, that's upstatemoversgroup.com. Be sure to check them out, upstatemoversgroup.com, and tell them Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent you. The show is also brought to you by our friends over at Yardware. Guys, Yardware is a veteran-owned and operating company licensed by the University of South Carolina themselves, so a very big deal, and they're selling must-have Carolina yard and wall signs. So these signs, extremely high quality. I'm looking at the one right now in my studio. It is fantastic. This thing is awesome. They're made out of 12-gauge laser-cut steel, and they come in both garnet and black. So whatever you fancy, whichever color you can get either. Football season's in full swing. The holidays are right around the corner. Christmas is upcoming. You can get yours today. This is a must-have for any Gamecock fan, by the way. Like I said, I'm looking at mine hanging in my studio. It looks awesome, I might add. It looks absolutely awesome. Any Gamecock fan, you know, if you're not going to get it for yourself, which if you're not, you're making a mistake, but you should get it for yourself. Any Gamecock fan in your life that you know, they are going to absolutely love this thing. Guys, you can check it out. Order yours today at yardwaresigns.com. That's yardwaresigns.com, and tell them Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent you. Let's get it. Joining us today, if he does each and every single Tuesday, former Gamecocks football player Alex McGrath. Alex here to help me break down South Carolina's 30-22 win over the 15th-ranked Auburn Tigers. We'll also look ahead to the game this weekend as South Carolina goes on the road. Another big opportunity as they take on LSU. But first things first, Alex, appreciate you taking the time, my friend. How was your weekend?
It was a good weekend, my man. It was a good weekend. Nice to get a Gamecocks W. Got a lot of yard work done, just the boring old adult stuff we all find ourselves doing these days. So it was good. It was a good weekend. Weather was absolutely perfect.
Yeah, it was. I also want to tell you this. I didn't know if you knew this, Alex, but today, this is actually episode 300 of the Spurs Up Show.
Hey.
There's nobody I'd rather be spending episode 300 with than you. Hey, especially talking about a dub. We could be spending it much worse off. So, yeah, but officially episode 300, man. Crazy. 300 episodes.
Congratulations. That's a lot of
wow, right. You got to celebrate the small victories, man. Yeah, 300. That's a lot when you think about it. But overall, again, like I said, I'm glad we get to talk about a W because South Carolina gets the 30-22 win over the Auburn Tigers. Alex, first things first, I'll ask you. Obviously, this game started out a little bit rough. First quarter was not friendly to South Carolina. You take a look at this overall game, and there's a lot we can break down, a lot I want to get into. But overall, I felt really good about this game at halftime when I knew that South Carolina did not play a great first half of football at all, and they were only down 2 points. It's crazy, Alex, because I feel like everything I thought would happen in this game sort of came to fruition. Just, again, we're going to get to the specifics in just a second, but I talked about all week, and we talked about how important this game was, what it meant for the program. We all knew the program was going to go one of two directions. The season's going to go one of two directions. And it felt like one of those games Will Muschamp and company just had to have. Again, Auburn 15th ranked, but they were only a 3-point favorite. Everybody was picking South Carolina. I'm sure you saw that on social media stuff. Everybody was picking South Carolina. It felt like one you had to have, and you get it. Just talk about the overall picture, I guess, what this win, getting this win at home means for this South Carolina program in year 5 of Will Muschamp.
I mean, it's huge in terms of momentum. I mean, because you were really like the first 2 weeks. I mean, like those were games that you were in, and you had a chance to win at the end, and it just didn't happen. You go on the road, you smoke Vanderbilt, you get that confidence rolling again. You go in, and you take Auburn's best shot in the first quarter. You fight your way back into it, and then you end up cruising to a victory at the end. I think from a confidence building standpoint, I think that was huge, absolutely huge. And so now you're walking into LSU having taken down an SEC Titan, and you're going to face another one. So that confidence just continues to build and build through these last 2 weeks. So we find ourselves in a pretty good spot here, despite how we kind of started the year.
Now, selfishly as a football fan, Alex, I talked about one of the big matchups in this game to watch was Jaycee Horn against Seth Williams. That was one I really talked about. And I didn't know how much we were going to get to see that on display, because I was just thinking to myself, teams really haven't gone at JC. They haven't thrown at JC. So, who knows how much we see. I want to ask you, because you were on a team when you were at South Carolina, you were on teams with some really good defensive backs. I mean, I think of Jonathan Joseph, Fred Bennett, Co Simpson, Captain Munnerlin, amongst a host of others. Talk about Jaycee Horn, his game. Obviously, he blows up on Saturday, 2 interceptions after having 0 career interceptions coming in. Talk about Jaycee Horn. I joked on the Monday show, this show is brought to you by Jaycee Horn. This is the podcast that Jaycee Horn built today, because, again, obviously, if he doesn't have that day, South Carolina doesn't win that football game. But just talk about Jaycee Horn, what you see in his game. I'm really happy that his skill set was able to be put on a national stage. Now, I think everyone has taken recognition of the type of player he is, but where does he compare does he compare to any guys that you've seen on the field for South Carolina, or just what type of player do you look at and see Jaycee Horn as?
See, it's such a hard comparison too, because I feel like, well, finally that demon is slayed, where he just didn't have a career interception at South Carolina. But at the same time, like every time you saw a statistic for him, it was like, for whatever reason, quarterbacks or opposing quarterbacks didn't even throw in his general direction. And it's like you finally get a matchup where somebody's going to feature a receiver that he's covering, and he plays out of his mind. It was a McQuamu-esque type of performance from last year. And, but comparatively, that's a good question. Because probably Fred Bennett more than anybody else. Then because he's so much taller than Captain Munnerlin is. So I don't really know that you can make that comparison, but probably more on the Fred Bennett vein if I was going to compare it to anybody.
How shocked were you they kept going his way? I was
just stunned. I was absolutely
because
stunned.
I don't know if it was Bo Nix just being Bo Nix, or Gus Malzahn and Chad Morris are hard-headed, but I understand you want to get the football to your best player. Again, that was a great matchup. Those are two guys that are going to be playing in the NFL. But at some point, you have just got to tip your cap to a guy and say, we are not going back his way again. You just can't. And I really thought going in this game, if you could get pressure on Bo Nix, not even sack him, but get in his face a little bit, get him out of the pocket. And he showed you on Saturday, it rang to be true. He's a gunslinger. He will put it in harm's way, and he did that. And I was happy to see, and I thought this going in the game, but that South Carolina secondary was going to be good enough to make him pay for it. And you saw JC do it. It was stunning to me to see them continue to try Jaycee Horn over and over again. It was like at some point you got to realize this is his day, man. This is just his day.
It was, especially that, was it the last one that he almost returned for a touchdown?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one, I don't even know how to describe that throw. That was just bad. But yeah, just to keep like winging it out there at him, especially like where Seth Williams was and where Jaycee was standing. I have no idea what he saw, but he just launched it that way, and that worked.
Now let's talk about the offensive side of the ball a little bit, Alex. As far as, I know we talk about Colin Hill a lot. He had a very pedestrian game as far as the stat line will show. Really offensively, you kind of had a pedestrian game as the stat line will show. You had under 300 total yards. You got outgained by Auburn in the football game. But I thought what you saw this South Carolina offense do and really the defense and entire team, is be very opportunistic. They made Auburn pay for all of their mistakes. Those 2 touchdowns in the first half, 14 points off of Bo Nix turnovers. Talk about, though, I really feel like the difference with this football team this year, and we've talked about it before, but the steady hand of Colin Hill. He's not throwing them out of football games. He's keeping them in games. And it's not the flashiest thing in the world. It's not the most entertaining thing in the world. But again, I talked about it coming in this Auburn game, what made me feel good about South Carolina's chances. I really do feel like you finally have an identity. You ran it more than you threw it. You ran for 153 yards. I think they had like 43 or 44 rushing attempts compared to 24, I think, passes. And I love what I'm seeing from the offense, again, as far as the identity and just being stingy in the running game, understanding what works, understanding, that there are some limitations offensively. I mean, hey, Shi Smith, tip of the cap again. He balled out. I mean, he had a fantastic day. Still outside of him, you really don't have a clue who your other go-to guys are. And still week after week, and I think, again, it does come back to Colin Hill and his steady hand, you're able to put enough points on the board to win. I mean, you score 30 points, and I would say you didn't even really have a banner offensive day of any sort.
Yeah, I think the total yards numbers, I mean, it was more or less plus 200 for Auburn. I think it's a little bit misleading just because, like you said, the turnovers gave you a short field where you're able to capitalize and get points in that fashion. But, I was very happy to see a Josh Vann sighting.
Yeah, 1 catch. How about it? He's still on the team.
He's not a missing person anymore. And then, and again, going back to you, like Colin Hill's just played really, really well. Like he's doing exactly what they're asking him to do. Mm-hmm. And, when we were talking about him versus Helinski before the season started, that was, the kind of crux of the argument was he understands this offense and he's not going to put the ball in harm's way. And at the end of the day, that's what the coaches are going to trust to put out there. And he's played beautifully. I mean, he
threw some dimes
where
Saturday,
people can catch it.
Yeah. He threw some absolute dimes on Saturday.
Absolutely.
That fade route to Shi, I know it was an offsides, and it's like, just throw it up. That was a dime in the back of the end zone.
It was. That was a beautiful – I mean, even the ones he was throwing down the sidelines to him, there was that one in the first quarter that Xavier Legette did not come down with, and then – which, I wouldn't consider that a drop. It's just, it's a 50-50 ball you're throwing up there. But even the one he threw to Shi on third down in the fourth quarter, I mean – you're that's all you can ask to do is put the ball in a place where your receiver can go make a play. And that's what he's doing. And, when you got somebody like Shi Smith standing out there,
do you look
that's going to be a successful strategy.
Do you kind of look at Shi as like a Kenny McKinley type?
Yeah.
I know that's a tough comparison, but yeah, I feel like that's the guy that I think of just former South Carolina receivers. And I'm like, he's that kind of player. That makes sense.
He is. He definitely, like, Kenny didn't get a bunch of jump balls, and that probably had more to do with like Sydney being on the other side. But I'm just so glad we're throwing that, because I know we were talking about that. Just throwing fade balls last year that it wasn't really something we ever did, and even with Brian Edwards standing out there. So I'm glad to see that has worked its way into the fold.
Now, Alex, I know both of us were we had our doubts. We had our questions, and just call it frankly, we were a little bit skeptical when Mike Bobo was hired for the offensive coordinator job. I don't want people to overreact to the Auburn win, because listen, again, I'm not taking anything away. And I think Gamecock fans, you're tuning in. I said this on the Monday show. I'll say it again. You should be ecstatic. You should be thrilled. You should be happy. You should be soaking this in. You just beat a top 15 team at home. Nobody can take that away from these players, the staff, the fan base, whatever. But not overreacting to the Auburn win. Do I think Auburn was really the 15th best team in the country? No. and I don't want to overreact in making this statement, but Alex, through 4 games, I would argue or ask you, was Mike Bobo the best assistant coaching hire of the offseason? I mean, because I just, yes, the defense was opportunistic Saturday. Yes, they've been, they've played some solid football all season. We've seen the third down percentages and what they've been able to do stopping the opponents. But I just feel like the offense, the improvements the offense has made from last year to this year is the reason this engine is going right now. Again, your offense isn't playing you out of football games. Like, they're giving you a chance, where I feel like last year, yeah, you had some defensive talent for sure. I mean, again, that was the big, you looked at the defensive stats last year and they were really misleading because your defense was on the field 35, 36 minutes a game. Now I just feel like with Bobo, with establishing the identity, obviously bringing Colin Hill, that's a big piece of it. Like I said, I would argue, and again, I don't want to overreact because there's a lot of football left to be played. But as of right now, I talked about this when I talked to Eric Kimry last week. I've been pleasantly surprised. I didn't think at any point this season we would be averaging 30 points per game. That to me is astounding. And I don't know, man. I just look at this and I think as of right now, Bobo, that's got to be looked at as one of the best hires of the offseason by any staff in the country.
I'm going to reserve judgment there because I can't get over
not
what
to
happened
overreact,
in Florida, but I am pleasantly surprised by and like I know we've talked about this too, but like at the end of the day, for the last 3 years, it hasn't been like world beater recruiting classes, but they've been good recruiting classes, and like I just think we have good players. At the end of the day. And like maybe, Colin Hill is a missing piece to that, where it's somebody with a ton of experience that can put the ball where it needs to be put. And I think that has a ton to do with it. I mean, I don't think Mike Bobo is like a bad coach
right.
or like
for
a bad hire,
for sure.
But I think he's been a very pleasant surprise. Thus far.
We were skeptical because it's never really worked under Will Muschamp. So, and that was the big question I had in the offseason was, is Mike Bobo going to be the guy to quote unquote resurrect Will Muschamp's head coaching career? And I would honestly say through 4 weeks, Bobo has been the primary reason that this thing has even clicked to the point that it has. Now, again, there's a lot of football left. How do you build off of this, which I want to talk to you about in just a second. One last thing on the Auburn game, though, and I talked about the defense, and really I saw this from the entire football team. But, it's funny, Alex, Sunday afternoon I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine. I saw a lot of this on social media, too, people talking about Shi Smith. And because, I mean, you watch he's a guy that chirps. He chirps a lot. He talks a lot of crap. That's part of his game. And I saw a lot of people on social media that were less than pleased with that. They were less than pleased with that and being critical. And I totally understand. Like, as a football player, football is a game of channeled aggression. Like, you can't just be aggressive and you got to channel that aggression into making good football plays and being a good player. I will say this, though, and I think having DJ Swearinger on the show last week sort of leads me to this, is I thought to myself, when is the last time we had that type of edge? When is the last time we had that type of swagger, that type of confidence? And for the first time in a while, not just from Shi, but I saw it from JC, I saw it from Shiloh Sanders, I saw it from Keir Thomas, I saw it from Kevin Harris, the way he runs the ball. I saw it from a ton of guys. This entire football team, I saw a team playing with an edge. I really thought we played with an edge on Saturday. Because I feel like every game has a tone, has a tempo to it, has a kind of the way the game is going to go. And again, for the first time in forever, like I watched back on that game, like we were the team that set the tone in that game. We were the team, Joe. And I agree with the people 100%. You can't get a 15-yard penalty, and especially if you're Shi Smith, like you're our best player, bro. We cannot afford you getting thrown out of the game. But just talk about that, what you saw. Because to me, that might be the biggest takeaway. That might be an even bigger takeaway to me for outside of anything that happened on the field statistically, to see a South Carolina football team, because one of my keys to the game was embrace the moment. To see a team that showed up, and I really felt like embraced the moment, the opportunity was there, and they took it. And like we said, we're starting to see a team, I feel like, play with some confidence, play with an edge. And I think if you do that, and again, you got to be smart, you got to channel that aggression accordingly. But if you can carry that edge with you into the rest of the games this season, I think you've got an opportunity to win a lot of football games this year.
Yeah, I certainly think like channeling the aggression and having that edge to you, I don't have an issue with that. I think where I think like ultimately, I think where I have an issue with it is when those antics come out and we're down by 3 touchdowns.
I agree.
And it's just, or like you're out of the game and you're over there like jawing with somebody. And, if you're, and, like looking at somebody like DJ Swearinger, like when they're doing that, we're going 11-2.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we are like setting the tone before it even starts. So I think, I'm fine with, people playing with that edge. And I may be wildly wrong on this, but certainly correct me, but it just seems like Shai gets into a jawing match every 3 or 4 plays, no matter what the situation is.
He gets into him a lot. He gets into him a lot, I will say, for sure. Yeah. I mean,
so that I think that's the only downside to is being able to control that.
Yeah, it's a love-hate thing because I love the fact he plays the chip on his shoulder, but like you got to have some self-awareness. Like no, and I want to say I agree with you. I mean, if you would have been chirping like you did and we lost by 21, yeah, I have a major problem with that. But I guess just in the sense of, again, one of my big questions in this game was: are we going to show up when the lights are brightest, show up and show out, or are we going to fall flat on our face again, like we've done so many times before with Will Muschamp as the head coach, especially? And just to see a team, like I said, come out, embrace. I mean, again, that chirping and stuff is well received when you're winning. No question. I mean, DJ Swearinger, one of the most infamous, maybe the most famous play of his career. He got a 15-yard penalty on, but nobody cares because you won the game. And like you said, you won 11 games that year. So it's a lot different when you're winning versus you're not. But you did win. You did beat Auburn. And like I just think playing, maybe edge is even the wrong, playing with that confidence, like playing with the confidence I saw that team playing with. And I'll tell you this analogy, Alex, and see what you think. I equated this team when I was talking last week to a really talented hitter in baseball who's kind of in a slump. And this could really apply to any sport because the question is, what comes first, success or confidence? Because to have success, you need to be confident. But you're going to be confident if you have success, right? So it's like, what comes first? So to see a football team out there, I thought Carolina played very confidently on Saturday, and you get the win. Maybe this can serve as a snowball effect, which kind of leads me into my next point because I wanted to ask you, this game eerily reminded me of last year against Georgia. And I know the opponent was different. The ranking was different. You weren't a 24.5-point underdog, and everybody was picking you to win this week. But kind of how the game played out, you know what I mean? As far as, Jaycee Horn has the Izzy game and, you find a way to get the win. It's not always pretty at times. You get outgained just like you did last year. And it's, again, you find yourself in a very interesting spot because last year after you beat Georgia, you were 3-3 with 6 games remaining. This year you beat Auburn. You are 2-2 with 6 games remaining. So now the question turns from, okay, awesome. You beat number 15 Auburn. That's great. Now what do you do with it? And I think, obviously, we know how it finished up last year. I think you lost 5 of your last 6. You lost to Appalachian State. I mean, the wheels fell off very, very quickly. What do you want to see from this team going into the LSU game? Because I think this team is built so much differently than last year's. I think this team is so much better. Like, I'm not necessarily worried we're going to see the quote-unquote wheels fall off at any point. But after a big win like this, and you can equate it to when you were at South Carolina, like, you obviously can't rest on your laurels and get too high. How do you want to see this team channel and use this game, use the confidence from this football game to go throughout the rest of the 2020 season?
Well, I mean, just as you said, just to build that confidence, because at the end of the day, and what's been so interesting to watch throughout this season is like, I mean, whether you think Tennessee's any good or not, for them to get whacked like they did 2 weeks in a row and lose by 27 to Kentucky at home, and then you watch like LSU, get beat on the road at Missouri. You watch them, get beat at home by Mississippi State. Mississippi State, the wheels are completely off of the Leach.
Yeah, that's insane.
Wagon train. So, like, I think you play with that confidence in that it doesn't matter like who you're playing, where you're playing, because everything is so fluky right now. So being able to carry that confidence through, I mean, you may be able to beat some teams that nobody in the world would have thought you could have beaten otherwise. And so, steamrolling Vanderbilt, beating Auburn, no matter what Auburn does from here, just provides you that spark. And it's a spark in the locker room that, like, hey, we won 2 in a row. We know we can do this. We can go in there, and if we want to, we can push LSU around, just like we pushed around Auburn. And having that confidence and executing all those plays you just did to score those points, to get those turnovers, that carries you through into the LSU game, assuming, of course, that the football team didn't go to whatever party that was that had 400 people in the street and now they all have COVID.
Yeah, you know what's funny? That's literally down the road from me, that video that was released. I mean, it's literally like 2 minutes away from me. So, yeah, I saw that. And I was like, this is going to go over really well. I was like,
there's no way we play next week. There's no way. There's going to be like 30 positive tests.
I was like, this is going to go over really well once. And I was watching the Braves last night, and they were like, local news at 11, party. And I was like, oh, God, here we go. This is going really, really well. We talked about a little bit off air, Alex. I want to talk to you because I'm really – this LSU game is really intriguing. Line comes out. LSU is a 7-point favorite, which, I totally understand. I think LSU, they've struggled, but they're still a really good football team. They've had a couple of weeks to get ready for you now. Not of their own doing, obviously, the COVID stuff coming up in the Florida game, but they've had a couple of weeks to get ready for you now. It's at home, at night, at Tiger Stadium. Again, I know it's only 20% capacity, but it's going to be raucous. I mean, bottom line, they're going to those LSU people are going to show up. It's an intimidating environment, as we talked about. And again, this is a really interesting perspective because you were on the team that went to LSU in 2007. And I'm sure everybody remembers that game from the fake field goal. We all remember that, the trick play. Mm-hmm. And you guys played there in a 3:30 kickoff. So it wasn't a night game, thankfully. But just talk about the challenge that awaits South Carolina, because again, South Carolina has been really close. I mean, we all think back to that 2012 LSU game where South Carolina, I think, was second or third in the country. Went there the week after beating Georgia 35-7 and fell up just short. And again, really tough place to play. Like, I'm not knocking them or holding it against them. That is an extremely tough place to play. But just talk about, again, you've been there. You've been in that stadium. Talk about the challenge that awaits South Carolina simply just going on the road and playing in Death Valley.
I mean, it's hard to go on the road anyway, just because you're flying, you're staying in hotels. You got to keep your focus, kind of about you. I mean, it's not like they're not going to be out like partying in Baton Rouge or anything like that. But at the same time, like looking at it from, 2007, 2012, the 20% capacity is, 20% capacity, depending on, if they've got Texas A&M standards or not. That's huge in our favor. And it may be raucous, it may be loud, but it's not going to be like it would be in Tiger Stadium at night. The best thing I could say about the environment. So when I first started working, I was in training with a guy who went to LSU, and he described it absolutely perfectly. He said, the drunkest that you have ever been in your entire life is a Tuesday for most LSU students. So I think that's kind of what you're walking into there.
The rowdiest atmosphere you could think of. I'll ask you specifically about the game, not just, again, the atmosphere or whatever. You're facing the defending national champs. I mean, that's a hell of an opportunity. You have an opportunity to defeat the defending national champions. And again, they're a 7-point favorite. And I know they lost a lot. Still have a lot of talent, though. Miles Brennan's a very capable quarterback. Derek Stingley on the defensive side is one of the best defensive backs in the country. I think the individual matchups on the outside are going to be a lot of fun to watch. And, my question for South Carolina going in this game, Alex, is more so around the offensive side of the ball, because really what scares me, again, and we've seen it, if LSU can take Shi Smith away, and listen, again, no disrespect to Jaycee Horn, Derek Stingley is one of the best defensive backs in the entire country. I mean, he is a legitimate, bona fide stud, first-round draft pick, all that stuff. If they're able to take away Shi Smith, what is South Carolina's second punch? What is their other go-to? And I wonder offensively what they'll be able to do. What's really interesting about this game, though, Alex, is I said last year, again, relating it back to that Georgia upset, I said after last year, because you had Florida right after and then Tennessee. And I said, if you lose the next two, you sort of undo everything you did in Athens. Like, you need to be able to at least win one of the next two. You need to be able to translate this win into positive momentum, into getting more wins. And again, we all know what happened with Florida, with the refs, whatever, and then Tennessee, you just get blasted on the road. I don't think if you lose to LSU necessarily, it really, takes away from beating. I mean, this is going to be a really tough game, as we know, but what are you looking for specifically from this football team? And again, it's another big-time opportunity, a nationally televised game. You're the underdog yet again, but certainly this is not the LSU team of last year. I certainly do look at this as a toss-up game. But what are a few things? Are there anything specifically you're looking for from the Gamecocks in this game in Baton Rouge?
Well, I mean, if just right off the bat, like if we can consistently run the ball with Kevin Harris, that really takes a ton of the pressure off of Shi Smith and allows you to kind of spread some of that around, because you're not leaving yourself in third and manageable. And that really opens up the playbook tremendously and kind of gives you a lot more confidence. If you find yourself behind the sticks, so hypothetically, if we're not able to generate any kind of ground game and we find ourselves in a lot of 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10s, that's where that's going to rear its ugly head. So I think, from a game planning perspective, I think the entire goal of it would be to get yourself in 3rd and 5 or better most of the time. And that really opens everything up to where you can run reverses with Dak, or you can hit Nick Muse over the middle for a quick hitter, and you're not having to go down the field all the time to, Xavier Legette, Josh Vann, and Shi Smith, where they can take they can take your main one away from you. So I would tell you that's going to be more than likely the goal this week in practice. And, based on what we've seen through the first 4 weeks of the season, I think that's going to 100% be what the game plan is.
Yeah, and I think one of the stories defensively, too, for South Carolina will be Israel McQuamu's health. I mean, you really need all hands on. And that's the crazy thing when you think about it. South Carolina did what they did against Auburn defensively without McQuamu. I mean, it's insane. We had some young guys.
Because they wouldn't throw it to anybody but Seth Williams.
Yeah. I mean, and I will say, JC, obviously he had the game he had, but you had some young guys step up in the secondary, and John Dixon and Shiloh Sanders looks better and better week after week. And so you've got some pieces there. Like you said, we know that South Carolina's recruited at a pretty decent, a top 20 clip. There's talent on that football team. It's about putting them in the right spots. I have to think, though, in closing here, Alex, I have to think Miles Brennan and Ed Orgeron are not going to be that stupid and throw it at Jaycee Horn again. There's just no way you can watch the film from that game last week and go, yeah, this is the guy we're going to try to pick on. There's just no way.
Well, I don't even know that it's necessarily they're going to try to pick on him. I think it's the matchup we can kind of dictate with our coverage alignments and saying, their go-to guy is always going to be on JC. Like you would try to take away Shi Smith, right? Yeah. Which is harder to do. Which, we may have witnessed coaching malpractice on the other side this week, because if you're not going to shift, Seth Williams around to the slot and always keep him on the outside like that, that's the advantage that we have with Shi, is that he can play in the slot and he can play outside. If, their, go-to guy is only going to line up on the outside, that's not going to work, because it's going to be Jaycee Horn's going to be standing on top of him every single play.
Alex, before I get you out of here, one last fun question, because you mentioned the Auburn side of things. Whose seat do you think is hotter, Will Muschamp or Gus Malzahn's?
Ooh. It's funny to me that Auburn people hate him as much as they do. Look.
Here's the thing. He has beaten Alabama just enough to keep his job. That's the entire reason he still has a job there, though. 100%.
Well, I'll tell you this, too. If we had played the national championship in 2013, I assure you that Will Muschamp's seat would not be hot.
Right. No, for sure. That winning cures all. But it's just, God, I talk about the Mike Bobo hire and how great of a hire. God, that Chad Morris hire just looks pitiful. It looks terrible. Bo Nix is a shell of himself this season. Granted, give all the credit to South on his defense, but Auburn just looks inept. Offensively, really.
It's a tough look. I'll say that. But it's kind of weird too, because when you watch that offense, does that look like Chad Morris offense, or does that look like Chad Morris elements in a Gus Malzahn offense?
I don't even know. It's tough to say. They're having some major issues, which 2020 is crazy. That's why, people ask me, do you think South Carolina could win out? Do you think that? I'm like, let's let it play out week to week, because things we think we know now, they change. Things that are true now or not, may not. Hey, after the Florida game, some people were saying we're going to win one game this year. So, like you said, don't overreact.
We got two.
Yeah, don't overreact. Savor the victory. There's a lot of positives to pull, but I will still say this South Carolina football team, still an imperfect football team, obviously things to work on, but hey, you get a huge win at home. Now you go on the road with again, another huge opportunity. Here you go. Stage is set. Night game in Baton Rouge.
What are you going to ask for?
What are you going to do? That's all you can ask for. All you can ask is the opportunity to do it. And we'll see if Muschamp and company, Colin Hill, that entire crew, they can get the job done. Alex, as always, man, appreciate you tuning in.
I'll say this too, real quick before we get out of here. The biggest indictment of Chad Morris, maybe that Arkansas might be good.
I mean, I think they are. I think they are, honestly.
Because at the beginning of the season, like Georgia's down there kind of playing to a stalemate in the first half, and I was like, oh, maybe Georgia's way down, and then Arkansas seems they should be 3-1.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that may be the biggest indictment of Chad Morris.
I mean, people were complaining before, when they added the 2 SEC games that, South Carolina doesn't get to play Arkansas this year. And I'm like, now you look and you're like, maybe we did well having to add Auburn adding LSU and Ole Miss or whatever this LSU and Auburn or whatever it was. It's like, I think the draw's not that. I don't know if I really want to play Arkansas this year. I'd rather play a struggling Jimbo Fisher Texas A&M team. Let me get them instead. So yeah, Sam Pittman's doing an incredible job. But yeah, man, Alex, always a pleasure. I would say a successful episode 300, my friend. We will do it again next week, hopefully talking about another big Gamecocks W. But until then, man, appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely, buddy.
Yep. As always, he's Alex McGrath. I'm Chris Phillips. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll catch you next time with an episode of the Spurs Up Show.